Steve. I've been told, did you call him Gibbo at some point and get...
Only once.
Only once,
Only
is that
once.
right? Can you tell us about that?
Only once. Yeah, I was down the south coast and Crow picked me up to bring, I was at Vincentia or somewhere, and Crow picked me up to drive, so we'd come up together and it was to meet Jack, you know, and we were all in the room, and I mean there was a lot of experienced players in there, and I'm sure that we were all in awe of Jack. You know, we sort of knew and heard a lot about him. He'd actually coached the Dragons in '71 when they got beat in that grand final. I was on the bench for third grade that particular day, and I remember him coming over and saying, everyone from the thirds and the reserve grades have got to go across into the first grade dressing room to watch the game there, and you've got to keep your footy gear on because, you know, you may be going on. And I've walked in the room, I'm just mesmerised by all of my heroes who I'd grown up with, and I'm just looking at Billy Smith and Graham Langlands and Barry Beath, and I'm thinking, gosh, this is how good is this, you know? But that was just an amazing thing, and that's what Jack was like, because he cared very much for the players as a player as well as a human being. There were things that he'd done, which I'll get onto a bit later on, but he still had this aura about him. Like when you walk into the room, you knew it was there. And we were, even though we were all experienced, you know, I'd played 10 seasons at the time. I think we were all still a bit unsure as to how we're going to get on well with Jack and all this type of stuff. And naturally enough, we're chatting away, and I'm pretty friendly with those people, and I said, Gibbo, and how you going? This was after he'd sort of done his speech and all that type of stuff. And he turned around and he said, you keep calling me Gibbo and you won't be playing here. And the room went deathly silent. I don't know whether Jack did it deliberately or not, because, you know, 3 weeks later he makes me captain of the side. And but yeah, you could have. It just went deathly quiet. The whole thing. He said, you can call me Jack, you can call me Coach Gibson, or Mr. Gibson, or just Coach. I said, certainly, Mr. Gibson. and that was the last we ever heard of it. But it certainly got a message across to everyone. We're doing 4 nights under Johnny Peart as coach, and Jack, the first thing he did, he said, all right guys, we're going to train Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday morning. He said the rest of the time you're going to be spending with your family, because that's the most important thing in life, is your family, and you've got to spend time with them. And you know, you can do extra training if you like and do it in your own time and that, but I want you to be with your family. And then he'd talk, you know, whether you're a first grader or a third grader, he'd give the same amount of attention to you. And that was fantastic. If there were serious selection problems, he'd come and ask probably 4 or 5 of the senior players what their thoughts were. He wouldn't necessarily go with them, but it certainly made you feel to be a real part of the team. He instigated where there were 4 different teams, and we play these games each Tuesday, and you know, the Bear was a captain, and Crow was a captain, Price was a captain, I was a captain, and you get points, and at the end of the year the team that won would get shouted by the rest of the teams, and it became like serious competition, you know, like, but it was good, and it just added a bit of flavour to your training, and never got bored, and they'd always try different things. Jack would even buy, sometimes he'd go and buy a young kid a car and say, here's your car, because you can't get to training on time or something like that, and that's what Jack was. Or Sam Miguel, you know, the Parramatta football team give a brand new Ford Falcon to Sam Miguel children's establishment out there at Windsor. He said, and of course we'd all donate $200 or whatever it was, you know, so that's $2,600, and there's a 10 grand car, and the rest of the money just came from Jack, and never any mention that. This was from the Parramatta first grade football team to Sam Miguel, and that was just the type of guy he was.
They were a great team. People sometimes try to downgrade one of their values by saying, oh, you know, this bloke more important than the other, but all I ever said about Jack and Ron Massey is they were both happy with each other. They were both happy with each other's contribution, and they weren't together because they agreed on everything, I'm going to tell you. No. I wonder if they agreed on anything sometimes, but they dead said, and that's why Jack had him there, Ron Massey, and Dad said they disagree on a lot, I can assure you.
And Mass would be the conduit between.
Pretty rough conduit.
You know. And that's what, because some players, you know, were still in awe of Jack, and they'd sort of go through Mass or whatever, and he'd sit down there with us and he'd go through what we, you know, good points, and he'd start off with the boy with the beard, and that was Paul Taylor, because you know, Jack wasn't good with names and stuff like that, you know, and he'd say, yeah, you did well, and you know, you 7.5, 8 out of 10 and all that type of stuff, and then he'd get to the senior players, you know, he'd say, Edge, you didn't have a good one, did you? I said, no, Jack, no, I didn't have it. Well, whatever Jack said, okay like that, or Cronin, yeah, what did you do? He'd just shake his head, and he said, I'm not going to say that, I'll just move on. And he'd go around like that.
One of his best with that was when he'd go through the players and give them their grading. Ronnie Hill, he had a game that you couldn't think you could have. Well, I've probably had a few like it myself, but he had one of those ones, and when they're giving out the points, if you knew you had a bad game, you'd sit opposite your mate and you'd look at him because you knew Jack was coming to him. And Bear and I are sitting opposite Ronnie because Ronnie had a game you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. So Jack goes through him. Say Ronnie's 9, he gets 7, 8, skips over 9. At the same time, he was coming off contract. There'd been talk that he was coming off contract, you know. He was open to offers or the usual thing, but so Jack goes through it, jumps over, goes from 8 to 10. Bear's saying, what about 9, Jack? You know, the old, what about 9? And anyway, he gets through all of them, 13, righto, he can go out and train, and we're thinking, look at this. He said, all except you, Ronnie. He said, the video's set up over the Lees Club. He said, here, go and have a look at it. And as we're walking out, he says, and they tell me Penrith's dropped off. So, but that there for Ronnie had to go over and watch it by himself. And the auditorium only seats about 600. He sat in a little corner, you up there looking at it by yourself. But, yeah, that was one of his best when we used to get the marking. He was the easiest coach I think I played under for the fact that you knew what you had to do. If you were going bad, he told you. You never died wondering. But
you know, as I said, yeah, like, I'm fortunate enough to play under some of the best coaches in the world, and Jack was the most easygoing coach I've ever had anything to do with. He'd say, well, here's your, these are the rules, just don't break them.
And coach players to what they could do. Forget about the thing they say he was a defensive coach. He coached the players to what he thought or knew they could do. I never very seldom asked a player to do something he didn't think he could do. So, you know, that's where he was smarter than they all talk about different things, but that's what I always thought his great strength was. He get the best out of players, but never asked them to do anything he didn't think they could do.
His famous line was, you know, I don't want to overcoach you. I don't want to overcoach you. He said, if you think something's on, you go for it. He said, and if it doesn't work, we'll talk about it at training, and you mightn't do it again. You know, but so you felt very comfortable with him, and you know, you could actually go out there and make decisions. I think in the 3 years that he was there, I only got a message twice, and one of them was the grand final as to which way we were going to run for the victory lap. So you know, he just never bothered you. So he made you feel pretty confident about making decisions. And then, you know, if there's one he didn't like, he'd pull you aside and have a chat to it, and he'd ask you why, and he'd say, oh, well, I did this, this, and this. I said, oh, fair enough.
If you're going to make a mistake, make it at 100 mile an hour. That was his favourite saying. If you're going to make a mistake, make it at 100 mile an hour.